questions, eye contact if it's face-to-face, enthusiasm, listening, tone, clarity, setting expectations, someone who's flexible. That's an interesting one as well. Those two I'll explain as we get into HBDI, the thinking preferences. These two go together. Flexibility and clarification of outcomes. So, let's introduce you to a model. Good points there. And then I will cover off exactly what we're going to cover today. This model is representative of the whole point of the next 3 days and what we're going to be covering. So if you flick over to page 6, you'll find something that looks a bit like that. By the way, is this pace okay? Never really know. Sometimes Americans want me to go faster, and
so
sometimes
I don't want to speak for everybody in the room, but odds are you're most likely talking to a room full of people that are used to absorbing vast amounts of information very, very rapidly across an 8-hour day.
Great,
so
you're in the right place then.
Probably be speed clicking through these slides, and we'd be just trying to take it all in.
Okay, right. I won't go too fast. Yeah.
I'm not saying speed it up.
Finished it too.
Just say it.
Okay. All right. So essentially, what this covers is the core skills that you need when you're in any communication situation, but in particular, any form of support, well, actually any good communicator needs. Then we're going to break it out into how that breaks down into some subtleties and then why that actually happens. So feel free to fill it in as we go. All right, so what are the base skills? And you mentioned them up here. What are the basic skills? The essential areas are the ability to understand what a stakeholder or a customer is looking for, what their needs are, and respond appropriately to that. Those are the basic skills for any good communicator. So, if you respond without understanding their needs, you're in trouble. If you understand but you're not able to respond to those needs, you're in trouble. You will need to do both. And that's why tomorrow is going to be focused on understanding, and day 3 is going to be focused on how to effectively respond. Okay, so activity. What should be done to do these things? How do you, this is a silly question, but how do you understand what someone needs? What do you need to do?
Listen and ask.
Pretty well. Okay, that's active listening.
Pretty much listen and then confirm by putting it in your own words.
Right. So listening,
translating and speaking back.
right? Oh, wow, you guys are sort of advanced here. Let's just stay on the real basic stuff. Listening's important, but also
Responding.
well, asking questions.
Asking questions.
Right, ask questions and listen. Keeping it simple. That's the activity. This is the stuff you need to do. The basics. Responding is about responding appropriately. Everyone's going to respond. Everyone here is going to say something. So it's basically responding to what their needs are. However, so that's all very straightforward, I hope, those areas there. The quality. How it should be done. Let me tell you a true story. A true story of what happened to me on a flight over from from San Francisco to Raleigh-Durham. Raleigh-Durham. Okay, right. Raleigh. I was on this plane. I can't remember who it was. I can't remember if it was Delta or AA or whoever it was, but I was on this plane. We started off, and one of the air stewards was very efficient. Efficient to being quite abrupt. You know, he wasn't really helping people. He was getting all the bags in and putting them there and telling people you can't have that here, and you can't put too many legs. You've got to take it outside. Obviously, very, very effective. If anyone could just, I don't know what that is, but yeah, if you could just, you missed the housekeeping.
It wasn't me.
Oh, it wasn't you. All right. If you just,
Well,
we'll
I'm
break it
going to
10
turn my phone off.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. So there I am on the flight, and I'm on the emergency exit, and there's two guys next to me, and both of them were kind of frequent flyers, the big frequent flyers. These guys, they had been bumped down from first class, and they weren't particularly happy anyway. But there they were on the emergency exit. Anyway, so the steward comes up and he's one of these guys said, "Do you want any drinks?" "No." "Okay, fine." He goes. I thought, wow, he is a bit abrupt, but he's very efficient. He's getting everything done really quickly. Anyway, it comes to the end of the flight, and he comes up, and when they tell you to put your tray tables up. Okay, so he said, "Okay, everyone, can you put your tray tables up, put your seats up?" This guy comes up and he just goes, bang, click, poof, to this guy and moves on. This guy's like, "Did you see that?" I'm like, "What? Did you just see that? See what you just did? God, bad enough. Did you see that?" I'm like, "No, I'm sorry, I didn't see this." That's just rude. God, that guy's rude. Right, okay. Anyway, so we're walking off the plane, and this guy goes, "Do you have a form that I can complain with? Do you have a complaint form?" I'm like, "Yeah, we can get you a complaint form." I left him to it. So I thought, this is a frequent flyer. He's obviously important to the company. The guy was doing his job. He was doing the right activity. He was doing what he was supposed to be doing. It was just how he was doing it that was the issue for this individual. So, any thoughts on why the customer in that situation was upset, and why, more importantly, maybe, why the individual may have, the steward was are they called stewards? I think they're called stewards. You know what I mean.
Good question.
Yeah. Why? Why did that happen? Why was the customer unhappy? Why was the steward acting like that?
Originally, it was just all, I don't want to call it robot, but just not caring what the customer was doing at that time, just carrying out the task, not really.
I'll never probably know why he was like that. Could have been
You haven't asked, so.
Sorry?
Until you ask, you're not going to
I
know.
understand that. But certainly, it was one of those moments. Has that ever happened to you, by the way? You've been into a place, they've done all the right things, but it's just the way they've treated you?
So it's not just the right things. He was treated poorly and he's treated rudely by something that he's not invested in. What does he care if the tray table's up and locked? It's not really his thing, it's the airplane's thing, it's the airline's thing. So this guy's coming along and he's slamming this tray shut and he's locking it, and it's not like there's a compensating piece there. It's like, well, that was rude, but boy, I'm glad the tray table's up and locked. Who cares? Nobody cares about that. So
the key thing here is that while you can go through the motions, you can do the right thing, you can ask the right questions, it's a little bit around, I guess, this part around engagement, vested interest, empathy, whatever you want to call it. There is, how you do it can make a big difference. And so the question is, why do some people do things, the same thing, they just do it very, very differently, and they get a different result? Some people are able to focus on RTO, get to the target objective, sort out the problem, but they still have an unhappy customer. Okay, so this is down, for a lot of us, obviously you can have a bad day, but for a lot of people it's around preferences. How you naturally do what you do. And what you're going to be really interested in, I think, for this group, is that there is a bit of a preference as a group, to your thinking. You have quite similar thinking preferences. And those may manifest, they may manifest themselves in different ways when you're dealing with a customer. The preferences definitely impact on not just what you're supposed to do, but also how you do it. So what we're going to be covering today, tomorrow, and the day after is not just what you do and giving you some models, but also how you can do that to deal with both the technical issue as well as the people issue. Any questions on that?
So I think one of the differences is that steward had a job to do, so he went and did it. He could probably knock out every single tray table, in 2 minutes, the way he did it.
Highly
versus,
efficient.
Talking to everyone and coddling, and where the flyers would be happier with, hey, would you mind, let me help you with that? But he wouldn't get his job done, so it's that balancing act.
Yeah. And it is interesting, without getting into a long conversation, if you do have the opportunity to come to Australia, the experience, the domestic flying experience is very, very different from the US. Very different. I mean, I don't know why, but you do feel like on a plane in the US, sometimes you are, they call it cattle class, and boy, do you feel like it. It's get on, get off, and people going through emotions. It really is, how do we want people to feel at the end of that communication, as well as what do we want to happen, So we need to balance both. And it's really down to, some of us have preferences to do it, and some of us just don't. Some of us don't care. That's okay. As I said to someone the other day, they said, but I don't care. I said, let's fake it. Let's fake it, that's okay. As long as the customer feels like you care. I know it sounds, but that's the reality of it. Not everybody is naturally going to care. So we need to give you some models to at least make sure the customer feels like you do care, even if you don't. I mean, it'd be great if you do. I'm sure you do care, but it's caring about the customer as well as caring about the result.
So do you find situations where the divide between these skills and technical skills turns into sort of a zero-sum game, where you have personnel that are less technical and use this to sort of fill the gap, and that in the short term that creates good outcomes, but in the long term that creates bad outcomes? And I'm not just making this up. I mean, yeah, it's interesting. You said that you've trained our PS team, and so what we find in our experience and support with our PS team is that we suspect, we don't know for sure because we can't talk to these people and we can't ask the right questions, that what has happened when we are out fixing a broken system is that someone has focused on the non-technical aspects of interaction with the customer to make them satisfied and covered for a gap in technical confidence, which leaves a problem that then comes to us.
Yeah,
to fix.
you need to do both.
Yeah.
You've got to do both. And I remember, funnily enough, many years ago in New York, some guy going, when we ran through this thinking preference piece, he said, are you telling us to stop thinking technical? I'm like, no, absolutely not. What it is additive. So most of you are really solid. All the research, all the assessments show that TSEs, for instance, are technically very proficient. So we're not saying don't be, absolutely not. We're saying it's additive. Let's add this onto it so you can deal with the technical problem as well as the people problem. And yeah, is it easier? And here's the interesting one. Oh, this could be a long conversation. Is it easier to take someone who's really a people person and teach them technical stuff, or is it easy to get people as a technical person and teach them people stuff? I have my opinion about this. Let's see how we go the next couple of days. Okay, so today in particular, what are we covering? What are we going to get into right now? Okay, we just covered off effective stakeholder communications. That we're going to look at thinking preferences next. Why you do what you do, which goes back to that idea there. What are your preferences that may affect the way you do what you do? We're going to look at whole brain communications and how you can take a whole brain approach to a holistic approach to communicating to customers and to everyone. And handling tough situations and tough customers. We will take a whole brain approach to doing that. So those are some of the key areas we're going to be covering today. Tomorrow we look at the areas specifically of discovery and listening and understanding, and then day after responding. You good to get into it? All right. Thinking communication preferences. Look, this is... I spoke to someone last week. No, week before, anyway. Went out for a few beers with the group, and the lady, Jan, do any of you know Jan? Who's a TS,
Jen Wilson?
Jan
Shri?
Jan Shri.
Jen Shri?
Shri, yeah?
Yes.
So she was saying, this saved my marriage. Because her husband, he went on Elite Consulting and she went on this. Now I'm not saying that I'm trying to save people's marriages or anything like that. But there are a lot of interesting side pieces you can take out of this section. What we're essentially looking at as an objective for this module is to look at ways to significantly communicate your communication effectiveness, build rapport with internal and external stakeholders by recognizing and adjusting to their communication styles. So that's kind of what we're just about to cover. The way we're going to do it is I'm going to play a bit of a game with you to understand your thinking preferences. Then I'm going to explain what this HPI profile is. We've got a highly cerebral group here. So what that means is that I'm happy to deep dive into any of this stuff, into the evidence of it. It's the world's #1 thinking preference tool. And then I'm going to give you back your profiles. And somewhere in between there, we're going to have a break. Okay, questions at any time? Let's play a game. Have you ever wondered how you have developed the way you think? Yeah, everyone's over 30 here.
28.
28.
Close enough for good.
Got 2 years before your thinking preferences come to a halt.
There's still time.
There's still time to change. It's like, I don't know if you ever watched Seinfeld. There's a great little piece where he talks about when you get to 30. He says, when you get to 30, things change. You know, you go to a party, you meet people, you find you've got something in common with them, you find you've got similar friends, you live in similar areas, got similar hobbies, like doing similar things. But you know what? You're just not interviewing for friends anymore. It's like your brain. We get to about 30, and we're pretty happy with where we're at. And our synapses have continued to become more and more efficient in the way that we think. And for a lot of us, we don't really want to change anymore. Okay, so I'm going to play a game with you on how you may, just to give you an indication of how you may have developed your thinking preferences. So what I'm going to do is give you 5 cards. Completely randomly. And what I want you to do at the moment, well, feel free to have a look at them anyway.
Go fish.
Yes, fish. Ready? Ooh, that's interesting.
See, you're intuitive and always you're holistic.
Have a good, have a good read of them. What I want you to do is imagine that essentially when we're born, this is a nature versus nurture debate. When you're born with preferences. How many people have got kids? How many people have you guys have got more than one? Okay, are they different? Were they always different? Yeah, it's like they're different. I've got 2 kids and they just couldn't be more different. And they were like that from birth. Well, not from birth, but from very, very early on. So when you're born, you are definitely born with some preferences and those stay with you, but different things kind of impact you. But let's imagine that this was you when you were born. What I want you to do is to get these cards, your 5 cards, and considering who you are now, put them in order of preference. So the one, you just put them on top of the table. The one at the top would be the highest, what represents your highest thinking preference. And the one at the bottom would be your least. You will have the opportunity to change these. Wow, you got a lot of green cards, Keith. So if you can put them in order. So when I said top of the one closest to the middle.
What's the significance of green versus red?
Well, one of the things is to introduce you to the colours and what they basically mean. I just randomly gave you cards, but you seem to have got a plethora of green. You might want to keep hold of them, I don't know. Not having seen your profile. So one closest to the middle of the table is your highest preference, and one at the bottom closest to you is your lowest preference. Okay.
You said the closest, the middle of the table is your highest preference? Okay.
Highest preference. So at the top. Is there anyone who would say that the cards are perfect?
No.
No. Good. Okay. So you're going to have an opportunity in a moment to improve this hand of cards. But essentially we are born with some preferences. And then as we get older, things start affecting the way we think about things. Think back to when you were a kid. Think back to when you were, junior school. Around about that time, where you were living, what you were doing. What do you think were some of the things that may have impacted the way you think? For you.
How far back are we going?
Before 10.
14.
Parental discipline.
Right. So if you had, your parents were quite disciplined?
Well, that was a form of discipline, yeah.
Right. I'm wondering where we go. Okay. Fair enough. Parental discipline.
A form of discipline, instead of like torture or
Yeah,
something?
I know. My mind falls to the
Felt
don't
like
go
it
there,
at
don't go
the
there.
time,
Yeah. I mean, I used to get at school. I used to get the
the
a ruler.
Yeah, the paddles. I remember the paddles.
Oh, yeah, the paddle.
Those were the days.
Yeah.
Corporal punishment. What other things would have affected, teachers or
Mostly at that age, it's your interaction with other kids.
and what you
Your
did?
peers,
Your
yeah.
imagination is a lot broader.
Yeah. How much time you spent playing, imagining, or how much time you spent in front of the TV? Those sort of things will affect.
Chores,
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Whether your parents got you to do chores regularly or whether you just kind of went and did whatever you want. There's a whole bunch of things early on that start molding the way we think. And we have, when we're young, we have if you imagine the brain, the synapses in the brain, it's like a thick bush of lots of little twigs. And something really interesting happens around about the age of 12, which is those twigs in this bush actually start disappearing. So as opposed to, when you're young, it's like your head, it's here, there and everywhere, but as you get to around about 12, between 12 and 18, literally your brain goes through a pruning process. And just like a tree, or anything that gets pruned, it means that those synapses left over get stronger and more effective. So physically, we start building some strong thinking preferences. What we're going to do is play a bit of a negotiation game, see how good you are. We're going to take this hand of 5 cards and improve it. I'll give you the opportunity to improve it. You're going to have 6 minutes to look at other people's cards, and I'll explain how we do it, and see if you can improve it by swapping cards. Now that means you can't just take it, so I'll have that, good. And you can have this. That's not the idea. You've got to agree to that swap, but the idea is that you do build a better set that more reflects your thinking preferences now. So how are we going to do this? If you could just grab your cards in one hand, doesn't matter, right or left hand. Okay, doesn't matter, just grab all your cards. If you could all stand up. Okay, so what I'm going to do is essentially, I'm going to give you 6 minutes. I'm going to put on some background music for 6 minutes. And you're going to have 6 minutes to look at everyone's cards, try and get the best possible hand. Have a good read of the different descriptors. For instance, there's one that's musical. That doesn't mean you're good at playing music, it just means that you really like music. So make sure you read the descriptors. Your time, 6 minutes, starts to get a better hand now.
What's your music?
I'm not
You look
giving them
at
too exploratory, holistic, or particular.
Yeah.
Should really investigate.
Technical, yeah, I don't think you have too much.
Consistent,
Or
probably has intuitive. So
probably imagine.
Definitely, unfortunately, no.
it's more intuitive.
I like your rational
I
one.
like intuitive.
That was something about
So I'll take Either of those or both.
No, it was actually one of my boys.
Oh, it was?
So if you want it, I don't mind training for something. I'm not
Go
good.
I'm getting less good at that.
Having special that's 2 years.
I know.
What was it, your
I think
problem?
synthesizer.
No, I'm saying you can take control.
Maybe I hate that.
Don't settle.
What you got, Keith? Straight.
Put your cards on the table, brother.
No, the same
Musical?
You ever trade cards? So my stack's getting better as I trade out. It's getting more accurate. So
You don't want to
this is my no trade stack.
Oh,
That's me.
You already had one.
Yeah, I mean, I got most of the stuff. I got intuitive and harmonizing.
I just let go of intuitive.
Okay, so
I like
not
the
bad.
detail.
Now,
You don't want to do it.
well, I got articulate, holistic, big picture, synthesizer, and exploratory. I can't. This is everything.
Explore
This is everything I am.
I give you everything. But do you see anything in here?
Well, if you, all right, you want intuitive or harmony?
No, I let go of that one. Harmonizing, not so much.
You want to
Should I take your holistic
Don't settle.
synthesizer? Okay, so you're looking for my exploratory?
That's the one that I like most. I love to take.
That's the one I can't give up.
Which one you have?
Right, so
That's one
I
I
think mathematical would be one of that.
So when I get the match
Don't
on it, like
part
the
ways,
full house,
because I love.
I don't trade the full house. Sorry.
Are you done?
I'm almost done.
These are the two.
This is my central. This is my central.
Safekeeping.
You have passion.
Safekeeping, I just
Are you
got-
interested in harmonizing or for describing yourself?
Those three, don't
Oh, I do.
create problem solving.
Intuitive ideas.
Persistent. Yeah, those are kind of like really the main thing I take on persistent. But you know, no.
So, I
as a
can
matter
flip
of
that.
fact,
You don't think
harmonizing?
you don't think really going out there.
Passionate.
I'm looking for music.
Folks, what you got?
Oh.
He's sitting on.
No, I'm saying.
Oh, just the one.
Integrating.
Trusting. This be early. Rational.
I'm pretty empathetic. I'll take one of those.
Let's see. I can get the flexible.
I like both of those. But,
You're very quick. Kind of like the same, yeah.
Yeah.
Keep that one.
You're gonna have all red?
Remember, let's see what you got.
I got one card.
I don't believe anyone here.
We got one card.
I got one card, the rest of it's a perfect stack.
Let me just see your stuff.
I can't see the
Alright,
Alright, don't put them
I
on
like
order.
that one,
No,
because
put
that's
into
a good, that's
I got this. I did the one to organize it. Trusting.
You want one of these, you want one of these?
I'm not very, I'm not
Administrative is what
I
I'm
guess I am a superhero. I don't know. A lot of this stuff
You
is
have
going
to
on. I
rash.
can't be.
And
Tell me you want to do it.
Probably not.
That's how you want
In
to
that
get rid
category.
Okay.
What you got over here?
oh, okay.
So which one would you get?
Quantitative, control, definite, industrious, extender, safety. I want to keep these two.
That's probably my.
That's 6 cards. You're on the pocket.
Okay, you got about a minute left for the music.
I did that.
You wanted to, I didn't have it to.
Hey, who's only has 4 cards?
Hey, who only has 4 cards? I have 6 cards.
You gotta have 5.
Definitely
Someone's
not
stolen the car.
No, you dealt me 6 cards. Look at the dealer. Sell them for the house over here. Who's got 4? What is it?
What does that say if you're like stealing cards?
Yeah.
You know what?
Like, if you
It says that he's
what you
giving
got.
up his car.
Yeah, these 5 I'm completely invested in, but then that means my stack is good, and I want
We
to
still
give
got a
this
few
intuitive
rings
to
there,
the
man.
guy with 4 cards.
Yeah, everybody does.
But what do we get? Register quantitative control,
I'm thinking that's
definitive,
you, man. Is that you?
for numerical relationships. No, can I see definitive? Clear, exact, free from ambiguity and obscurity. All right, let me lay
So
out
when
my
you
stack.
think you're pretty much happy with the with what you've
Take
got,
a look, so
you
This is my least favorite right here. That is my stack from me to the inside out. So I'm only supposed to have 5 apparently, but I don't know who has 4. If somebody has 4, it's dealer's
He's from
fault.
this area. He's actually from down in South Carolina.
Blame. Where was that on here? We're gonna be able to blame the dealer for having too many cards. I didn't find that out.
5, 6 times, yeah.
But I'm not.
I like it.
Basically,
I'm not.
Here's something else, so.
You can keep that. You give that to him. He's mad.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
He didn't
didn't want it,
want
huh?
the part.
You need. This is a requirement.
You good?
You must have
Just make him happy.
administrative, able to what
We're
is
trying
it?
to.
Able
just
to
got
manage
one.
supervisor
one.
right here.
Wanna
I
see
know, but he wants one of my other cards. All right,
That
that's the
doesn't seem
problem.
like
Yeah,
me.
Yeah,
gotta
I
look
was
at mine
thinking
again.
right, but
Alright, so this is
can't pawn it off on him.
Alright.
6
And
minutes.
which ones aren't you? Let's pare this down. Which ones are not on the table?
All right, a little bit longer.
Yeah, got the right number.
I want a music book. That's what I want.
You want a musical?
I didn't have anything on my sleeves,
I
Lambert.
need music. No, music's not I'll trade you.
Yeah. What's the very next card? What's the card right next to you? What's the card next to it?
Next to it,
Oh, yeah. Well,
safekeeping.
It's
It's definitely not.
Might be.
I want musical. I'll give you this friendly for musical.
I'll tell you what, I'll give you that opportunity in 1 sec. Wow, really? A very long ending, isn't it?
but you can see the end of the case though, right?
Take it as a bridge.
You hear this?
Take it as a bridge.
That's sort of how you can do this. So just because you can't build something with your hands doesn't mean you can't build something with your
Okay, that's it.
Alright.
I thought it was going to go on forever.
Great try. You should be in sales.
Okay, grab a
Cells
seat.
every day.
Put them in order of preference again. Let's see if it's improved.
Do you want the bonus card you dealt me back?
How do we get a bonus card?
Because you dealt me.
I gave you 6.
You dealt me 6
Oh
cards.
wow, thank you. You gave away your intuitive card.
I'm trying to do that. For
Knowing something without consciously thinking about it. Thank you very much. Perfect for me. Okay, so put them in order of preference. One at the top, highest. One at the bottom, lowest. Wow, look at that. Who would have thought? So much red. And green. Wow. Wow. So, gives you an indication of your ability. Is anyone, by the way, is anyone worse off than they were before? Because if you have got a great negotiation skills course, Okay. All right. So we move through life. Hopefully, you've got something which looks a little bit better. I'm looking at your cards and I'm like, okay, fine. When you move into, you're getting close to where you are now. You've left school, and you're either going to go into further education, or university. Or I was, by the way, I went to university in upstate New York as a matter of interest, for what it's worth. That was an interesting experience. So. Yeah, you go to university, you get your first job, and you start in your first job. I know my first job massively changed the way I thought about things. Just the people that trained me and that I looked up to, and the whole sort of culture there. Just wondering, from your perspective, when you get into, you're in your 20s, what are some of the things you remember that changed the way you thought about things?
Well, I went to the military.
Right,
Out of
that
high
is
school.
going to significantly. May not. Yeah, interesting how many people I work with who've been in the military. Who actually, if you're a big picture thinker, it's a great thing to do. I wish I'd gone to the military because it does give you, a process of everything. Everything has a system.
It's very structured.
Absolutely, very, very structured, and that really will affect your thinking.
And at the same time, it draws people from all sorts of socioeconomic backgrounds from across the country. If you grew up in an isolated sort of bubble in your own cultural circle, then all of a sudden you're in the middle of all these other people who've come from different perspectives, and you have to deal with that.
Right, and
But
see
you can
things.
leverage the structure to do that, but you still have to face that.
It's a
It's
very
very
good point.
interesting.
See things very differently, and they've been brought up in different ways. Can anyone think of anything else that really affected the way that
Being single.
Sorry?
Being single.
Yeah, That does. Absolutely. The single with money.
Single with money and no other worries.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
You look back.
Kuna Matata then?
Yeah.
Here we go, the Lion King. So yeah, it's that ability to do whatever you want within reason with your
Sounds
time
stuck in my head now.
can really change
Can
your
you sing?
thinking. Okay, so
Not in here.
we come up to essentially where we are now, which is you are a sum of your parts. You are a reflection of everything that's happened to you and also how you were born. And what we need to do, or what I want you to do, is to get your final hand. The final hand is going to be 6 cards. 6 cards. 5, which are the best representation of you, so you might want to jump on musical if it is. 5 are the best representation of you, but I want you to find 1 card. So I'm going to give you the whole pack to choose from. Don't jump at it quite yet, Victor. There aren't that many here, so please just, you need to swap them. Put one of yours in, take one out. And I want you to get 5 which are the best representation, but I want you to find 1 card which is the opposite to you. The opposite to you. So you've got 5 cards which are representative of who you are, and 1 card which is the opposite. So you might want to just come around here at the bottom. Just
Hey,
going
I'll
to give
take
you
that
like 4 minutes.
administrative card
4
back.
minutes on this. 4 minutes.
I know you don't want it.
Yeah, go for it.
There.
Right. Opposite me.
Somebody want an artistic, that's it.
Alright, show what this one.
So make sure you
I'll take the
read.
artistic one. You said there was one artistic one. Yeah.
Really? Now remember it is
You
your
wanted to
preference.
replace one back,
Replace one,
right?
yeah. So remember it is preferences.
Conceptual, if anybody wants that one. You can visualize things, but
Sorry, we replace one of the 5 and do one of the
So yeah, you got 5. The purpose is to get 5 which are the closest representation of you, and 1 which is the opposite. So if you're happy with the 5, then just pick
Well,
one.
we can trade out as many as you want.
Trade,
Okay.
yeah, you can get rid of all of them, but you should only have 5. And 1 more. 5 and opposite.
6.
6 in all. 6.
Okay.
6 cards, 1 which is opposite, 5 which is...
You're not artistic, Matt?
nah.
It's all on Celeste's side of
Yeah,
the
that's why our marriage is so
opposites
great.
attract.
Yeah, I mean, we are completely opposite spectrums.
Yeah.
So,
Some interesting research on that, I'll tell you that.
about what?
About people who are in long-term de facto relationships as opposed to people who are in marriages, long-term marriages.
All that are like alikes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
marriages
mean,
are more of marriages are unlike thinking, and more de facto relationships are similar thinking. I don't know why, just is. That's the research.
yeah. No, I've heard that actually.
Yeah.
The ones that seem to do the best are the ones that are completely opposites. You know?
Absolutely. Because then someone covers the stuff the other person doesn't want to.
That's exactly what we do in our household.
Yeah. Someone's got to deal with the finances. In fact, you'll find a good house, well-run household is one that's whole brain. So it covers off all areas. Sometimes you have to cover up areas you don't like to do it, but somebody's got to do it. Otherwise, you're in trouble.
Yep. We've been married, it'll be 16 years this year.
All right.
Long
So I'm
time.
18 now. 18 years.
18.
Yeah. But I was in a de facto relationship for 8. So our preferences are quite similar. So unfortunately it means that one of us has to go to an area we don't want to get.
Yeah.
That's her. Not me. So you should have 5 cards. Put 5 in one row and 1 opposite. Just like Matt's done there. That's it. And Martin. So make sure the 5 are in order of preference. Very important. So they're 1 row of 5. It's going to turn into a nightclub.
Disco ball in here or something.
I'm out of the Roxbury.
I've got one of your EEs promising to take me out to Raleigh to something very much like that on Thursday.
Who's up?
I can't find what it's
Surname is quite
What are you looking for?
something
That
Dick.
planner, is that your opposite?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, well, no, I'll take it.
Mike Jones?
No.
No.
I'll tell
Is
you.
that what you were looking for your opposite? Or?
Kind of, but man, to be honest with you, it all depends on how I'm feeling that day. Because some days I'm playing, some days I'm just like, you know.
He used to.
Yeah,
The ability to.
I just don't like it.
A couple of new bars.
Terrible for the blank.
After second shift.
I'll tell you. I'll tell you it's right. Okay. Right. Are you sure that that's looking much more like it, Keith? Are you sure they're in the right order? That 5. It's really important that 5 are in the right order.
It can change.
Yeah, it changes.
Just
It changes.
depending on like the day.
Yeah.
You know.
That's very true, and we'll talk about that. How it does change. But if you're pretty happy with that in the order.
Sure.
Okay. All right. So what I'm going to do, most people hate this, but what I'm going to do is just to break it down on preference. I'm going to take your the bottom 2. Then we get a real feel for where your preferences might lie.
Well, I didn't know you were going to take something away.
I know. That's why I said, are you sure they're in the right order?
It's not be spontaneous.
I know. Oh, God, I'm taking away your blue.
I know, I don't like that.
Okay.
I wanted to swap it, but I don't want to cheat.
You had the whole pack. All right, so what we now have is 3 cards which represent what you believe to be your strongest preferences. Obviously, it's just a card game. We are going to give you your profiles back. We can see how close you are. But you've got 3 cards which represent your highest preference and 1 card which is the opposite. So for a lot of you, this is pretty typical. Okay, so breaking it down, we've got 3 cards here, blue, green, and then opposite red. We've got blue, green, opposite red. We've got green, red, and opposite yellow. So far on you 3, the opposite card is a different colour. Green, yellow, opposite blue. Yellow, blue, red, opposite green. All this is working beautifully. Let's see. White, yellow, red, opposite yellow. Okay. Red, yellow, blue, opposite green. Red, blue, red, and opposite red. Okay, I know why that is. That's probably because you wrote down. Did you write down that you're more of an introvert than extrovert?
I'm telling you when I'm filling out the form, I can't remember.
It's okay.
If I had to answer the question now, I'd probably say I'm definitely more of an introvert than an extrovert.
Okay, let's start off with a question. No, let me get you to do this. Grab your top card, the one which represents strongest preference. Very interesting. What I want you to do, you notice around the room I've written these different quadrants, these 4 quadrants, which represent 4 cards. This represents the whole brain. And we'll talk about that in a moment. What I want you to do is, with your card, could you go stand next to the flip chart that represents that? If only, well, this is a good spread, if it was true.
2, 2, 2, 2.
Interesting. Okay, so let's get a bit of a feel for what this might mean. What I want you to do from the yellow side is, could you read out what's on your cards?
I'm holding a card that says exploratory. Investigate new arenas, concepts, ideas, and points of view.
Okay.
Mine's creative, able to make unique connections and put things together in a new way.
Okay. So, what sort of thinking could we encapsulate? Do you think the yellow cards might be? Yeah, quite creative. A little bit out of the box thinking. Let's go to the, metaphorically speaking, the opposite side of the brain, the green. Okay, what have you got?
I've got administrative. So mine is to manage, good eyes. I call it.
Sorry.
Yeah, in other words, to manage, supervise, or direct.
Fantastic.
Industrious, hardworking, and diligent.
Right, lovely. So, quite interesting when you get people with different opposing preferences communicating itself, and we'll have a bit of fun later on about what actually happens when that happens. Let's go to the red. Okay.
Empathetic, able to understand how another person feels and able to communicate that feeling.
That's nice, isn't it?
Cooperative, working or acting together willingly for a common purpose.
Okay, so let's just say green as opposed to yellow. What would you, if you encapsulate what sort of thinking that might be? How would you encapsulate it?
In what respect?
Oh, if you had to describe that type of thinking, what might it be? They're out of the box? High green thinking, what do you think?
In regards to what they are?
No, sorry, I didn't run this very well. Apologies for that.
Yeah,
Yeah. You're supposed to summarise it as they do it, and I did red. So don't do that at home.
Take two.
Yeah, take two. So green. I won't get you to repeat it, but from the green perspective, what do you think high green thinking might be?
I would say usually more rational thinking.
Yeah, rational. Just read. Sorry. I'll come back to red again. Just read those out again. This is what happens when you go.
Industrious, hardworking, and diligent.
Diligent and.
To manage, supervise, and direct.
Okay. So supervising, direct.
Task oriented.
Task orientated. That's a great way. What about you guys? Thinking about. Just repeat those again, please.
Empathetic, able to understand how another person feels and able to communicate that feeling.
All right.
And cooperative, working or acting together willingly for a common purpose.
Okay. So how might you describe that sort of red thought process?
I think it sounds kind of team-oriented.
Yeah, team-orientated. Let's take that team orientation and go to the other side of the brain for a sec. What do we got here in the blue?
Have quantitative, oriented towards numerical relationships, inclined to seek exact measures.
Right.
I have logical, able to reason deductively from what has gone before.
Right. How would you maybe encapsulate that type of thinking?
I guess it's more the logical.
Yeah.
Facts.
Logical
Yeah,
facts, yeah.
yeah.
And you probably want a little time to
Only
think
the
about
facts.
it. Right, okay. So you are going to have represented in your thinking preferences a bit of everything, because no one's going to say, well, I've got none of that. There was one guy who actually had 0 red. Like he actually, actually had, I think it was,
Not a nice guy.
yeah, it wasn't, I think he might have been 1. It was crazily low. I mean, it was flatlining.
Serial killer or something.
He wasn't the warmest person in the room, let me tell you. But interestingly enough, you're going to have something everything. And if we just take the idea of relationships, not relationships, but if we talk about any relationship, but at home, for instance, you're talking about differentials. At home, you need to have, someone's got to look after the finances and look at the facts. So otherwise you're going to be broke. Flip side is hopefully someone's going to care about doing stuff together and, just being nice to each other and bringing all those warm pieces together for the relationship, sex, stuff like that. I don't know if that falls into red actually. Depends, I suppose. Romance. Excuse me, romance. Thank you. Not sex. Romance, but also quite important, the ability to think outside the square, to look into the future. Where are we going? Looking at the bigger picture. And especially when you're not kids, I've found that there is this need to be a little bit more systematic in the way you do things, having a bit of a process of when things happen. And if you can get all 4 going, then whether it be a relationship, whether it be a business, whether it be the job as a TSC, you'll find that all 4 are represented. Now, what you'll notice is, why do you think that for a lot of people there is an opposite colour that isn't represented on the left? Any thoughts on why that might be? Like yellow's at the top here for Jonathan. Oh no, it wasn't yellow at the top. Yellow was yellow at the top. So yellow top, but green is the opposite. Let's see. What was your opposite? Was it red by any chance?
I think it's red.
Red? Yeah. So why do you think that might be? Any thoughts?
Why there might not be clear opposites that match the opposite sides of the room?
Well, no. Why do you think that the colours that are a preference are actually not representing the colours that are not a preference for a lot of people?
I would just say because it's not that simple.
Right. Okay, that's fine. So the bottom line is that there are some areas. The simple answer is there are some areas that we have a preference for, but there are actually some areas that we really naturally move away from. We're just not that comfortable with it, and that's okay. But for a lot of people, what you need to do is to ensure that you take a whole brain approach to things, whether it be your job or whatever, relationship, whatever it might be. You need to go to places that you don't want to go. And that's what we're going to be looking at for these 3 days. primarily I'm going to be trying to get you to go into a lot of areas you don't not naturally want to go, and giving you some models to help you go there. What we're going to do is take a break, and when we come back from the break, I'm going to introduce you to this, which is now